Applications Committee of 23rd of August 2016. Could I remind everyone to make sure their mobile phones are switched off? And that includes myself, who forgot to do it the last time. And note that this meeting may be recorded and subsequently made available to the public for listening purposes. Thank you. Lucy, could you confirm the Sederunt?
Good morning. We have 17 members present. We are quorate. I have an apology from Councillor McGregor. Councillor Blake and Councillor Ian Crothers are not present but may be along later in the meeting.
Thank you, Lucy. Have we got any declarations of interest? Ivor?
Chair, it's with regard to item 6. My wife runs a similar establishment in Dumfries. However, after taking advice, I don't think I need to leave the room because I think it's far enough away that it doesn't cause any conflict.
Thanks, Ivor. Ian?
Thanks, Chair. Item 4, some of the objectors are members of my family, and I'll be removing myself from that item.
Thanks, Ian. Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. Also, item number 4, sir. One of the supporters is known to me in his capacity as an office bearer of Porton Community Council. In fact, he's well known to me, but I will not be declaring an interest in that regard. But I would want it noted that, working with him on an ongoing basis.
Oh, Jim?
Similarly, with the item 4, Chair, some of the objectors and supporters are known to me.
Good, Jim. Alistair?
Thank you, Chair. Item 6, the applicant is known to me, but I don't think my interest is such that I need to withdraw from the discussion.
Okay. Anybody else? Jack?
Item 6, the applicant is known to me, but I don't think it makes any difference in my views.
I would think the applicant is quite known to quite a few people. Aye, the same as yourself. No more declarations of interest? Could we confirm the minutes of the previous meeting? Agreed. Lucy, could you outline the procedures to be followed?
The Planning Applications Committee will consider each application in turn, as detailed on the agenda. The case officer or other appointed officer will make a short presentation addressing the determining issues, accompanied by digital images. Any latent information, amendments or corrections will be reported at this time. Members may ask questions of officers following the presentation on points of clarification. The chairman has been provided with a list of eligible representatives who have registered to speak at this meeting within the period specified in council policy. No other persons will be allowed to speak. The chairman will individually invite those who have registered in advance to speak to make their presentation, after which they may be questioned by committee members. No questions may be asked of members. The order of eligible parties being heard will be as follows: third parties objecting to an application, third parties supporting an application, statutory consultees objecting to an application, elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council who are not members of the Planning Applications Committee. Such members should withdraw from the committee chamber after making their presentation. Applicants or their agents. Representatives have been placed in alphabetical order, and a copy of the public speaking list is available from the committee officer taking notes of our proceedings. Presentations will be strictly limited to 3 minutes per person, excepting for national and major developments, which by their very nature are more complex, where the time limit will be 5 minutes. The chairman of the committee will ask you to come to a conclusion if you take too long. Representatives are encouraged to use the time allotted to clarify any points they consider material and address the determining issues. Certain matters are not normally material planning considerations and will not be taken into account by the council when deciding on a planning application. Representatives should not raise any new matters without explaining why they were not raised earlier with the case officer. Please do not repeat what is in the report, as members will have already read the report. After all the representations have been heard, the meeting is then in formal session, and no members of the public may address the committee from the public gallery. The Planning Applications Committee will then proceed to determine the application, or, where appropriate, agree a recommendation to be made to full council, who will determine the application.
Thank you, Lucy. Can we go? Can we go on to item 4 on the agenda? It's the site of the A714 opposite Corvisel House.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is an application for planning permission for the formation of a new access from the A714 just south of Newton Stewart. The access is to serve a small distillery for which planning permission has already been granted. This is the location of the application site on the A714, just to the south of the roundabout on the A75 trunk road on the southern edge of Newton Stewart. That's a closer view of the application site, showing the access position. This shows the proposed access in red in terms of this application. The area in blue is the site of the already approved distillery. This is a view of the application site access from July 2016, when it had already been formed and was in use to start construction works on the site. This is a view looking south again at that date, showing the access. This is a view, sorry, the previous was looking north, my apologies. This is looking south from the access. And this is looking north again towards the roundabout. This was a view that was taken when the original access was formed, when it was brought to our attention originally in March 2016. In that view, you'll show that you see the existing access to Barwhillanty Farm in the foreground and the proposed access position beyond that to the north. Again, this is a view from towards the roundabout looking south, showing the access and A714. That was March 2016. And again in March 2016, when the access had first been formed. This was taken in November 2015 at the time when the original planning application for the distillery was being considered. The proposal at that time was that access to the distillery was to be taken via the existing access that you see there, which was to be improved, and then from an existing field gate, which you can just see on the right there, clearer in that view. So the existing access to Barwhillanty Farm shown here was to be improved, and the traffic for the distillery was then going to turn right through where that existing field access is. This is the latest images of the access since it was rendered incapable of use, in other words, blocked off because it was unauthorised when it was originally formed. That's the condition it's in at the moment, pending determination of this planning application. That's visibility south from the centre line of the access, and that's visibility north from the centre line of the access towards the A75 roundabout. That's the proposed and existing accesses shown together. And this is a view from, I'm standing just on the exit from the A75 roundabout, looking back towards the access. You can see the yellow bags there on the right. That's the position of the access. And that's a view in the opposite direction, again showing the accesses together. And that's another view looking south, showing the access and the view south on the A714. And similarly from the carriageway looking north. This was the details of the originally approved access in terms of the distillery application. As you can see, it was to be shared with the existing access to Barwhillanty Farm. The radius was to be improved on the north. It was to be surfaced. It was to be widened to 6 metres, and then traffic would turn right into the distillery itself, which was on the right. This is the existing layout of the distillery as originally approved. And this was these are the plans submitted with the planning application, similar to the image I showed. The application site shown in red, and the other land in the applicant's control outlined in blue, which comprises the distillery site. This is the drawing of the proposed access, subject of this application. And that is also revised and larger scale drawing of the proposed access on the right, existing shared access to Barwhillanty Farm on the left. So key issues here are set out in paragraph 4.7 of the report, and they are proximity to the roundabout, potential conflict between use of vehicles on the two accesses because of the close proximity with the existing and proposed access, and junction visibility to the south, and the recommendation is to refuse for the reasons stated.
Thank you, Billy. Members, points of clarification? Ivor?
See the original application where you've got the access off the road. Was there roads concerns with that? Because if you've got a lorry turning up and you've got a car following it to actually go in as well, it might not get off the road, and it would cause issues if the car coming down was stopping the free flow. Was there any issues with regard to the original permission compared to this one?
The access as approved was to road specification, and there are conditions on the planning permission that require an access form to that specification. The only remaining issue there was a slight shortfall in the requisite visibility to the south, but given the existing situation and the lack of recorded accidents there, it was considered that slight shortfall in visibility didn't give reason to reject it. So in terms of the access as approved, it is to full road standards in terms of width, radii, etc. So it would be capable of carrying all traffic.
Ian Krause?
Chairman, I suppose I was going to maybe ask this later, but probably in a more appropriate time now. Just when you look at the drawing that's proposed now, you've got a access which is tandem now, and we'll maybe get behind the reasons why that's being proposed as we go forward. But from a roads perspective, I suppose this question is probably getting pointed at Ken. I mean, you're coming off at the same point, and there's wasn't an objection to the first one, but there is to this proposal here. I just need to better understand that from a roads perspective. I don't see whether you're coming off at the same point. It looks like certainly, because there's no upstand or anything between the two. It's obviously taken back. So you're coming off as if you were accessing the first one. So you're off and you're out to get a chance to slope to enter the second one. So just looking at that, I've just picked up on it when I seen that drawing. I hadn't seen that within the report. It looks like there's no more safety concerns, but from the recommendation for the Roads Authority, it seems like there's a perceived, certainly, thought there that there could be more risk to road users.
Can you answer that one, Ken?
Yes, as I said, the issues are set out in paragraph 4.7 of the report, the key issues that you're concerned with here, and those are visibility to the south over land within the applicant's control. The second one is the proximity of the new access to the A75 roundabout. It's some 16 metres centre line to centre line closer to the A75 roundabout than the previous existing junction was. The issues there, as flagged up by Transport Scotland as Trunk Roads Authority, but not in terms of a formal objection, were that the concern would be that traffic exiting the A75 may be restricted by traffic waiting to turn right into the access, And the third key issue is having two accesses so close together, there's potential conflict between vehicles manoeuvring in and out of either or both of these accesses at the same time.
You got anything to add to that, Ken?
I think all I could really add to what Billy has eloquently said there is that the original access that was consented involved a relaxation in respect of visibility. The proposed access is essentially looking for three relaxations to all be considered together. It's got slightly worse visibility than the original consented access. It's closer to the junction than roads would ideally like. We would normally want 40 metres between accesses on a A-class road. And the other thing is that it's closer to the roundabout. And whilst Transport Scotland offered no objection or even comment in respect of the original application, in respect of the new application, they indicated concerns, and I'm bound to consider those concerns. So it's really the fact that there's a number of relaxations coming together and compounding each other, and on road safety grounds, really no option other than to recommend objection.
Back in, Ian.
Thanks very much for that, Chair. So just, this has been directed at Ken, and so I'm looking for an answer from Ken, if that's possible, being the roads expert. Because what I'm picking up on is that you're coming off at the same point along the road. You're not coming up even a few yards slightly forward, close to the roundabout. That's certainly what it looks like from there, because I don't see an upstand between the new proposal. There's enough room in which to get a vehicle off, then turn left. And that's where I was coming from, Ken, in particular.
Thank you, Chair. The access, whilst it appears to be almost one there, is 16 metres centre line to centre line. So they are going to be totally separate accesses. As such, it's a potential conflict between the two, with driver's movements not being clear to the driver using the other access. The access that's been formed is not a temporary access, it's an illegal access at the moment, since no permissions were sought to form it. So, in point of fact, the design of the access is probably best not taken from this particular picture, but one of the others, where it's clearer that there is this 16 metres of separation between the two.
Ken, Peter.
Thanks, Chair. We're aware of the reasons why the original access can't be formed any longer. And secondly, if this is rejected today, is there any other access that the distillery can use?
As we understand it, the reason why the originally approved access cannot be used as a civil matter in terms of ownership of property that requires to be altered to form access to the requisite standard. And no, there is no other access as things stand at the moment.
Patsy?
Yes, it's really to do with Transport Scotland at 2.2, where they, it says they don't propose to advise against the grant of planning permission, and it gives the reasons for their concern. So it's the way you've interpreted that has caused this to come up for refusal, because actually they're concerned, but they're not worried, because they would say no if they were concerned that there was going to be a backup onto the A75. They've obviously looked at the traffic flow and decided that that is not going to be a problem. So I don't see why you've taken the view that it actually has to be up for refusal, as opposed to just doing some lines on the road to slow everybody down. I'm sure it could be done.
Ken?
Sure. It's not just the Transport Scotland comment which has been taken into consideration. It's the fact that there are essentially three relaxations all being taken together. The original was a relaxation in itself in respect of visibility, but it was deemed that because it would be improving the access for all of the road users on that private lane, it was deemed that it was an acceptable relaxation to offer. In this particular instance, there are three relaxations, and it's the compound effect of those three relaxations that have led us to the recommendation that we've actually made. Transport Scotland, whilst they generally don't comment on roads that are out with their remit, saw fit to provide concern. And whilst it's not taken solely on its own when considered with the other issues, it's these three relaxations that it's essentially putting together that give me the cause for concern. If it was just one relaxation, again, we have a certain amount of latitude that we can apply when we're actually discretion when we're making these decisions. But the three compounding together is what's given us concern.
David?
Really, just to reiterate for members' benefit, is that Transport Scotland's role solely is to do with trunk roads, so their interest is only in respect of the A75. This obviously comes off the A714, which is a local road, so it's entirely appropriate for Ken to make his views on that one. In fact, it is unusual for Transport Scotland to make any comment on something that doesn't directly affect a trunk road.
Alistair Witts?
Thank you, Chair. When the officer was taking us through the slides, he corrected himself at one point because he said that this was a south, north facing, and then he said, no, it's a south facing view. Would you be so kind as to let us have a look at that again? Because thank you.
Alistair?
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. It's a question basically to Mr. Druitt, if I may. Standing circumstances at this moment in time, Chair, I take it Mr. Druitt would accept that, you know, on occasions, traffic travelling south on the 714, in fact, has to wait until vehicles turn up the existing road. More often than not, agricultural type vehicles, tractors, etc. That's a point I would make. I'm interested in your response. And at the end of the day, Chair, it would seem to me that, you know, we've got to keep a sense of perspective in all of this.
Say again.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely accept that there will be times, I guess, at peak periods when there may possibly be traffic waiting to turn into the access, the existing access. The incidence of that occurring at the proposed access during peak times will probably be, I don't want to speculate, but it's likely because it's a business to occur perhaps more often during the peak times than perhaps agricultural and tractor type traffic. In respect of my thoughts on that, the fact is that the accesses are, the new access is proposed to be closer to the roundabout, and Transport Scotland's concern that they raise is the fact that if somebody was waiting to turn in there, because it's closer to the roundabout, there's a greater chance that traffic will back up onto the 75.
Andy?
Thanks, Chair. Just through you, let me ask Ken what the accident history is for this site.
The accident history, there's no discernible accident history at the existing access. The other access, the proposed access, is some 16 metres away, and I'm not aware of any accidents at that location either. So the accident history would be the same.
Jane?
Point was answered, thank you.
Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. It's a question about the land within the applicant's control. I mean, evidently in the approved application, it's assumed that the access that was agreed at that time was within the applicant's control, or the conditions attached to that would be on land within the applicant's control. So I'm curious as to why that's now an impediment to the development of that as being a civil matter. I'm just wondering if you could explain that.
Billy?
Albeit that the accesses are quite close together, the way access visibility is measured can radically change the land over which that elongated triangle, which is the visibility display, is required. In this case, the original access, well, sorry, before I go on to say that, you must also be aware that when we're talking about junction visibility, the access is either over land in the applicant's control or the road verge. In many cases, it's the road verge. So, it's not exclusively over other private land. As far as the original access was concerned, because of where it is and because of the slight curve on the road and the geometry, the appropriate access was achievable. Probably, without measuring out here, I would be speculating, but probably most of that was in the road verge to the south. And as we've said, both myself and Ken earlier, and it's stated in the report, there was a slight relaxation in the visibility south in terms of that access. They couldn't quite achieve the visibility that would have been required in an ideal world. But as Ken has made clear, that single small relaxation on its own in terms of that proposal was not sufficient to reject it. The relocation of the access to where it is proposed now brings in a different set of measurements and geometry, and it changes it to the extent that there would be a different, greater requirement for that visibility display to overlap land that's not in the applicant's control. The applicant has stated in his submissions that the owner of that land, which is the separate owner to the owner of the shared access, without complicating things, but he has made it clear, he has said in submissions that the owner of that land would grant permission to him to do whatever was necessary in terms of reduction of the height of the hedge or whatever to achieve the requisite visibility to the south.
Stephen?
Yeah, I think it's the last part of the answer there that I'm most interested in. So in the original application, it was taken on face value that that was something with it that could be controlled by the applicant. In terms of the original, no? Nothing was taken at face value. The roads officers would have measured it and assessed it and made their recommendation. And the access, the visibility could be achieved at that stage in terms of, well, an acceptable level of visibility could be achieved in terms of the original application. David?
I'm wondering if we're talking at cross purposes here. Councillor Thompson, was what you're asking to do with access that goes up to Barwhillanty Farm and the fact that before it appeared that they could use that road and now they can't? That point is obviously what Billy was referring to as being a civil matter, because we wouldn't have the control in planning terms to do that. But when the application had been made indicating that was what they were going to be doing, then we have to trust that they have dealt with the relevant parties and have got the relevant access rights across that land. But there wasn't a need to bring that within the application site. It was an existing access and it was shown as coming off. Obviously, there has been some change in that subsequent, and that's what's led to the situation we see today, as I understand it.
Ivor?
Yeah, it's a sort of follow-up to Stephen's, but on the actual visibility displays with regard to 33C, which is that the applicant has asked permission, or whether he's got it granted or not yet, I don't know, to reduce the height of the hedge, etc., to allow for the 140 metres, he claims, or 120 as required. Would that, if that was conditioned in, would that be enough to have just 2 relaxations rather than 3, and would that change the officer's view on the recommendation?
I think you probably need an answer from both of us here. In terms of any agreement from a landowner to allow works to be carried out, strictly speaking, that can really, if it's on land that's not shown to be in the control of the applicant in terms of a planning application, strictly speaking, that would really only be acceptable if there was a binding legal agreement in place to reduce that. Or to allow whatever works were necessary. In this case, it would be reduction in height of the hedge. We have had situations like this many times in the past, and it's notoriously difficult to control that because it has to be in perpetuity. And as you know, land ownership can change, etc., etc. So And Ken might want to comment on the roads issues in terms of the visibility.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with Billy's assessment there in terms of how it could be controlled. The difficulty is coming up with something that can be controlled and is enforceable and can be delivered for the lifetime of the development. The other issue is that even if that were resolved, there would still be a concern regarding the proximity of the two junctions to each other, insofar as I think one of the slides that Billy had there that showed a van sitting in the existing access. From the centre line of the proposed access, it's clear that the van, it could be a car or it could be an agricultural vehicle coming out of that other access, would obstruct visibility to the south. And equally, a vehicle coming out of the proposed distillery new access would obstruct visibility for a car coming out of the existing Barhill access. So they would actually operate against each other, and that's why we try and get a minimum junction separation between the two. In this case, because it's an A-class road, it's a de-restricted piece of road, we would be looking for 40 metres. Clearly, we're only getting 16, so that compounds the problem. I think that slide there indicates how visibility will be affected in that instance.
Yeah. Jim?
Thanks, Chair. How many houses, Billy, are accessed via the existing Barhill Farm Road?
I think it's stated in representations that there are 9 residential units up that road.
So this is not simply a normal farm access road?
No, there are a considerable number of residential properties using the same road.
Andy?
Thanks, Billy. You were too efficient there through you, Chair. Can you go back to the slide with the grey car? Have we got another picture of that? I can't think of one where the car isn't parked where it is. Have we got the same picture without the car being in situ? I don't think we have we? Yeah. And see, is that grass, weeds, whatever you call it there, there's nothing structural at the end until you get to the next junction? No. So there's no barrier other than the grass, which could be cut, of course.
No. If you look at section 1 of the report in terms of the description of the proposed development, the stone wall was to be returned round between the two accesses. You know, I think I refer to it as a nib or something like that, a bull-nosed nib.
Built. Is that what you're saying?
If you look at this is the proposal, there would be the existing wall or boundary treatment on the shared access to Barhill Farm would be returned to form that bullnose between the two accesses. But that would clearly be set back to the back of the verge. That wouldn't be right forward to the carriageway.
Billy, could you go to the slide that shows the van part opposite where we're talking for the access to now? On the slides, the van part. Aye, that one there, that one back there. That sight lines there to the roundabout and that seem to be a lot less than what the existing access proposed is. As I say, if you were turning that to the roundabout, there's a lot, as I say, we're talking about sight lines, the sight lines there onto the roundabout. If you were coming off that roundabout, you're more or less onto the van if a van was coming out there.
Chair, yes, not disagreeing with that, but clearly that's a long-standing existing situation.
I know, but as I say, it's the sight lines. It's just going about the sight lines. It's just other questions there. Could we have Keith Griffiths, please, objector? You've got 3 minutes, Keith, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Right. I had no opportunity to object to the original planning application because according to the regulations, I did not live within 20 metres of the site. Notwithstanding that the applicant intended to use and in fact alter my driveway and entrance by knocking down my boundary wall without my permission. My objection would have been, and still is, that this would increase the dangers to users of the drive because of a significant increase in the number of vehicles using it. The granting of legitimacy to the current illegal entrance would exacerbate the situation by preparing the ground for a potentially dangerous scenario. As an ex-police officer who has dealt with serious road accidents in similar circumstances, I would not like to have it on my conscience if a serious or fatal accident were to occur because I had not voiced my concerns. That's my statement, gentlemen and ladies. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Keith. Members, have we got any questions? Nope. Oh, sorry, Ian.
I think it's only fair to ask. The question's been asked by quite a few of the committee members in regards to, seems to be, for whatever reason, a difference in opinion in as far as how the access can be used as it's in its existing with the use and the permissions that have been granted. I wonder if you could add to that. What's the conflict possibly even, is a better way of putting it?
I was never approached. I was never asked. I was never informed that they wanted to use part of our drive. The first I knew is when a machine employed by the brewery started to knock the wall down, to which I objected, as would anyone who, if someone else were to knock their garden wall down.
Peter?
Sorry, maybe I've missed something. So do you live at Barwhillanty Farm?
I do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Fine. Got no other members? Oh.
Mr. Griffiths, there is an existing gate in the farm drive.
Yes.
I assume that that offers access to the land that is in question.
Yes, it does.
And that the owner of that land has the right of access through the gate.
He does.
So is the problem the widening of the access?
Yes, with the access being widened, at the moment through that gateway, as you can appreciate, the size of the vehicle using it would be restricted. By knocking the wall down and opening up the access that way, anything could be on it, from an 8-wheel juggernaut to a push bike. There's no one will know what's going to go on it. I mean, if I could comment on the one photograph where you saw the car at the bottom of the drive, that is the way we come out, because you can't stick your nose out into the road. You try to get sideways and look from your side view mirror up the road. If you stuck your nose out and something was come in, they would certainly hit you.
Right, we've got no other members. Right, thank you very much, Mr. Griffith. You may return to your seat.
Thank you.
So, Joe Pearce now, please, objector. You've also got 3 minutes, Joe, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I've lived probably the longest up the access road to Barwhillanty Farm. I've been there for 27 years. And I was quite surprised to hear that there was no reportable accidents on that junction, because my wife had an accident there in July 2015, which was reported to the police. And the cause of the accident was, and what is now our biggest problem, is cars speeding off the roundabout. Although the report had said people coming off the roundabout are going fairly slow, actually they're not. And what they can see is a straight, and they try and overtake. So it's my wife turned into the junction, someone tried to overtake and ran into the side of the car. And that now, it's become so prevalent that I'm almost in the middle of the road when I'm attempting to turn into our junction. because the number of people who try and overtake you at the time is quite frankly frightening. That is one aspect, and I think if we have another junction there, it's going to be even more confusing. We're going to have cars coming in all directions. Mr. Murray alluded to the fact that the access was opened for several months in the early part of the summer. Our normal method of leaving our junction is, as Mr. Griffiths says, you turn almost sideways on so you can look down the Wigtown Road to the south. Then you look to the north, particularly, as I've mentioned already, for cars trying to overtake coming off the roundabout. But what I found with the access being opened, I'm looking right, I'm looking left, and then I'm having to turn further round to the left to look at the junction from this proposed development. By that time, that's 2 or 3 seconds worth of time, I'm having to look to right again because a car travelling 50, 60 miles an hour is almost upon our junction. And it's becoming a bit of a lottery at times, although that is now closed since the access has been closed down properly. During the early part of the year, it was quite a lottery, knowing which way you're looking, left or right, because of the distances involved. Really, just to reiterate, the confusion that I think two junctions so close to each other will cause, gives grounds for concern over safety. And I would ask that the members of the committee rely on the professional advice of the roads department here.
30 seconds to go, Joe.
And deny permission for this access, purely on the grounds of road safety. Laudable as it is to try and bring development to Newton Stewart, we can't compromise on safety here. And I think the access thing should have been sorted out long before the development was started. Thank you.
Members? No. Right, thank you very much, Joe. You may return to your seat. Could I have Graham Taylor, please, the applicant? And you've also got 3 minutes, Joe, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go. Graham.
Thank you all for your time today. Firstly, I would like to highlight some key financial points which I think are relevant. From the 250,000 personal investment in the venture, 150,000 of that is already going directly to local suppliers involved in the construction. Based on the verified independent tourism report we commissioned, the Distillery Visitor Centre has the potential to create 325,000 contribution to the local economy and 1 million contribution to the Scottish economy. We are creating employment with 8 direct and 15 indirect jobs being supported by the distillery. Importantly, here are the reasons why we applied for the new access. Unfortunately, the existing approved access is untenable. Despite speaking with our neighbours, the Griffiths, they're providing a proposal showing the benefit of the upgrade and stating we would cover all costs and maintenance associated with the access upgrade. This was refused. It is absolutely clear that Mr. Griffiths is not interested in working with us to get this venture brought to the local community. It is only fair and reasonable to ask that our staff and visitors have a dedicated and well-maintained access. This will ensure the business is given the best chance to thrive without the possible threat of disruption or confrontation, which unfortunately is already the case with the current access. Whilst I agree that safety issues raised by objectors should be taken on board, it's worth noting that the actual roads report findings does not specifically cite road safety as an issue. I would please ask the Council today that we seek a more pragmatic approach to the findings in the Roads Officer's report, which with respect does not adequately take into consideration some key factors. Number one, the required visibility distance to the south can be achieved by cutting back the hedge. This would also give the existing access better visibility and improved safety. The new access does have room for 10 or more waiting cars from the roundabout, which is more than enough given the unrealistic nature of that scenario. The distance from the existing access should not be an issue as the traffic is already moving much slower nearer the roundabout. It will also help avoid conflict with the existing access road users, and with enhanced signage will avoid any confusion. The result from a no decision The result from a no decision today presents a real risk of endangering the venture, blocking any financial and employment benefit to the region. I'd also be concerned that it would send out a negative message to potential entrepreneurs or investors looking to come to the region. The result from a yes decision today would ensure that 3 full-time positions are created before the end of 2016. D&G would have a fantastic new visitor attraction to help boost tourism. And finally, we could reach out to create a lowland spirits trail which would help benefit the entire region. I thank you for your
That's your
time
3
and
minutes,
consideration today and welcome any questions you may have.
Members? Peter?
Thank you. Just going back, you've got the right of access to that gate on the right-hand side of the. Are we basically saying that that's just too small?
Yeah, so as part of the planning application, the roads officer report quite rightly pointed out that the existing access needed to be widened in order to accommodate both flows of traffic. So it's the existing farm access is not suitable to cater to both staff and tourist visitors to the site. So that upgrade or that recommendation was appropriate. The issue is that we're struggling to be able to create that access and work with our neighbours to achieve it.
Jim?
Can you maybe explain why the committee were advised you had an arrangement in place and now it appears that arrangement isn't in place? Because clearly the preferred option would be the one that was approved in a previous report.
Sorry, could you repeat the first part of the question? Sorry.
We understood that there was an arrangement in place between you and your neighbours to create a wider approach into your venture. You've now said that doesn't appear to be the case. Is there an explanation for that? Because that may have influenced the decision at the time.
Thank you for the question. When we applied for the application, and obviously it's gone through the process of being put in the public eye, we had no complaints for that. And because the access was shared, we took that to mean that we wouldn't have any problems achieving that access. Now, the wall that's in question is obviously part of a shared boundary. But as the benefits of the upgrade massively outweigh, the potential sort of disruption of changing the access, because we're talking about rebuilding the dikes, to a greater quality. We're talking about adding water runoff, increasing the visibility. There's no question that the existing access would represent an upgrade to the Griffiths. So I don't think it's unfair for me to assume that had we received no objections, then an upgrade and all of the costs being covered by ourselves, we would assume that that wouldn't be an issue.
Thanks for that.
Ira?
Chair, just on the same matter, 4.5 in the report says, shortly before final determination, there was a objection received, and you took it upon yourself just to go ahead anyway, and that you'd solve this. Now, if there is an objection, surely you should have had something in place at that point rather than going ahead with the development.
When that late report came in, that wasn't an official report that came in. It was more an issue to do with, there was a lot of complaints to do with the entire development, not just the access. So, to be completely honest with you, I took that to see that it was more a case of, an objector not really wanting the venture to go ahead. But to answer your question, I went to the farm on a number of occasions and spoke to David Griffiths, Mr. Griffiths' son, and we discussed the venture and we discussed the fact that there are benefits for both sides there because they have holiday cottages there. Having a distillery next door is surely a fantastic addition to that in terms of promoting them. And we agreed that the best way forward would be for me to produce a proposal that would cover exactly what we're trying to do, what it would look like, where the cost would go, what the maintenance would be. And as I said in my statement, I shared that with the Griffiths, and unfortunately, after chatting to David Griffiths, there wasn't any more steps. I did say, is there anything else we can do here? And it was simply a case of no, we don't want you using the access. And my next step was really to say, well, unfortunately, we did open the temporary access, and I should apologise for that. And that was really done in good faith to really avoid using the existing access while we tried to remedy, whether or not this proposal could be accepted. So unfortunately, quite a bit of effort did go into that initially, and the current access shouldn't be looked upon as a way to enhance our attraction. It's really simply finding a way to put in a necessary access, because unfortunately the existing access, as I said, is untenable, and I don't wish to create any more conflict with our neighbours.
Thank you. Other members? Ian?
See, so I'm absolutely clear in my own mind. I suppose we'll debate this as we go into session, but because from what I can see, paragraph 4.5, what Ivor's picked up on, is in conflict with what's been said through both, I think, yourself and the objector. So, and what I'm trying to understand in my own mind, could this be built? Can you gain access to the appropriate levels? And when it comes to being untenable, it's primarily because of the relationship that could possibly happen in regards to that conflict. So I'm just trying to be absolutely clear in my own mind, because I'm obviously, when I read this, I was, it's on balance, because I just want to know exactly where my heart lies with this. So.
I mean, with regard to the existing access, I mean, we've, if you want the full story here, we've obviously, since we put this proposal forward, we're trying to find a way forward for this venture. Some of the guys on site have unfortunately had to call the police to a couple of matters where Mr. Griffiths has taken it upon himself to try and block our own access to the venture, simply because he doesn't want us to use the existing access. And when a relationship reaches that point, I don't think it's unfair for us to try and find a way forward. I think I would always try and find, a much more reasonable way forward, but unfortunately it seems that is not going to be found with the existing access.
Thanks, Chairman. That kind of summarises it for me.
Patsy?
Yes. Just for clarity, one of the concerns our roads officer has is the visibility.
Yeah.
Which is out with your control, but and the planning officer seems to think that that's a difficult thing to make binding, if you like. Do you see a way of being able to do that with a legal agreement with whoever owns that hedge or not?
We feel confident about that. The land is owned by a farmer who we've spoken to about this, and I think that hedge has actually been long-standing a bit of an issue for anybody who's travelling on the Wigtown Road, because if you see from some of the pictures, I don't know if Mr. Murray could go back to a couple of the pictures where you can see the existing traffic signs are actually quite well covered. In fact, you can just see it there. If you follow the hedge down, you can just see the very top of the sign emerging. Now, there are probably another one or two signs after that. And at the moment, they're fairly well overgrown. So the discussions we've had with the farmer today has been, you can remove the hedge completely if required, as long as the field is obviously well stopped up with fence or dike or whatever is appropriate. But I'm 100% confident we could achieve that. And actually, the long-term benefit of that doesn't just benefit the existing access and the new access, should it go ahead. It would benefit all road users who are travelling to and from Wigtown.
That was put in as a condition. Sorry, could you turn on? Thank you. Sorry. Oh, mine's not working anyway. Never mind. So that was put in as a condition. You would not see it as something that would prevent you from getting that and being able to continue your project.
I would feel very confident that that would be easily created for you, should it be made a condition.
No other members? Thank you very much, Graham. Members are now in session.
Thank you.
Alistair?
Chair, as far as I'm concerned, having listened with more than little interest to the submissions and also the answers to the questions, I personally feel that it would be helpful to defer consideration of this application today and to arrange a site visit as soon as it's practicable to do so, and then reconvene, as it were, to allow the application to be determined at that time. I know it's a procedural motion, and I will move it now.
Jim?
I would be happy to second that motion. If you look at the photograph there, the photographs don't always accurately convey dimensions. And I think this is a situation where you do need to be on the ground and see the distances actually involved.
Members got a proposal, motion and a seconder for a site visit. Stephen?
Yeah, could I maybe offer that a representative of Transport Scotland maybe be invited to attend?
No.
Well, 2 points. Firstly, it isn't on a trunk road, so it's not actually really within their remit. And secondly, we can't ever insist that a key agency member turns up. It's different if you're asking Ken to come along because he's an employee of the council, but key agencies out with our control, we can't make sure that they turn up, I'm afraid.
Stephen?
No, I appreciate that. I think it was more invite rather than insist. But also, given that we're being asked to consider the review, I just thought it would be courteous to actually invite them.
We can certainly ask.
Right, we've got a proposal, we've got a motion and a seconder for a site visit. Is anyone else otherwise minded? Agreed, site visit. Get Ian back in. Okay, we go into item 5 on the agenda. Mount Stewart Hotel, Portpatrick, 16/B/1/0051. And we've got Billy Murray speaking to us again. Whenever you're ready, Billy.
Yes, thank you again, Chair. This is an application for planning permission for 2 extensions to an existing hotel in Portpatrick. That's the application site. It's in the southern part of the village of Portpatrick. That's a closer view of the application site, the existing hotel. This is starting with a view from the harbour area of Portpatrick up the road towards the hotel. The hotel is just beyond the horizon in that view. This is a closer view of that existing road. This part of the road is a public road, and you'll note it's restricted width, double yellow parking restrictions on both sides, and no pedestrian footways. This is the application site, the existing hotel itself. That's taken just on the approach to the crest of the hill coming up the road you saw in the immediately preceding image. The road turns to 90 degrees approximately to the left there. From about that point, it ceases to be a public road and is private from there onwards. The access to the hotel itself is facing you in that view. This is probably a better view from the same point, showing the access to the hotel on the right and the 5 car parking areas that are provided for the hotel in that area. You'll see a single car parked there in that view, and the road curving around to the left is private. This is a view looking along the front of the hotel, showing the existing car parking area. You see the car parking areas delineated on the ground in that view, and a single car in one of those spaces. There are 5 spaces provided at the moment in that area. This is a view looking up the hill. This is actually the site of the proposed dining room extension, which is to be attached to the northern gable of the hotel. In other words, that gable. So if the extension were to go ahead, from that view, you'd be looking at the end of the narrow extension. That again is a view of where the extension would go. That view of the gable also shows that there are existing parking spaces delineated in that area. If the extension was to go ahead, the 3 spaces that are available there at the moment would clearly be lost. That's a view of the same area looking back down the hill. That would be the site of the proposed dining room extension on that gable. And again, you note that the parking spaces that are available there, but that would be lost if the development were to go ahead. That's a view from further up the private way. Again, you'll note, and it's mentioned in the report, there are double yellow lines provided on that private way, but clearly those are private double yellow lines. Those are not under the control of the Roads Authority because that's a private road. That's from the top of the private way looking back down towards the hotel. And again, it's just to give a flavour of the characteristics of that road and to show that there are intended, shall we say, parking restrictions on that road. As part of the amended proposal, up to 9 spaces were to be provided in a car parking area to the rear of the hotel. So this is a view of the entrance to that proposed car park, which would be taken off the private way. That's a view into that parking area. Submissions indicate that 9 spaces could be provided in that car park. And that again is a view looking up the hill to the access to the car parking area. This is a view of the site of the other extension. There's a small kitchen extension to be built behind the existing flat-roofed extension you see there. So it would just be a continuation of that extension. And that's an equivalent view from the back of the hotel looking towards that proposed kitchen extension. There are no issues with the kitchen extension. This is the location plan and existing elevations and floor plan that were submitted with the application. This is the proposal. You see bottom left-hand corner, that's the proposed narrow dining room extension on that northern gable. This is the existing car parking arrangement. So it shows 5 spaces along the front. In that view, it really only shows 2 spaces on the gable, but I think on the ground, as you've seen from the slides, there are actually 3 spaces available there. That view also just shows 2 spaces in the rear car parking area, albeit the submissions indicate that there were 7, initial submissions indicated that there were 7 spaces. But again, I mentioned that in the report that there may well be 7 spaces, but they're not marked out as such. This is the amended scheme in terms of proposed car parking. You'll see the hatched red area where the dining room extension was to go. So clearly the 3 spaces there would be lost. The 5 angled spaces along the front would remain the same. And that shows 9 spaces laid out in the area to the rear. So that would be giving a total of 14 car parking spaces were the development to go ahead. So the key issue here is a shortfall in parking. The requisite parking would be 18 spaces, where only 14 can be provided. So clearly that gives a shortfall of 4. Given the characteristics of the access to and the roads surrounding the site, it's considered that that shortfall in parking would be an unacceptable relaxation, and therefore the recommendation is to refuse.
Billy, members, points of clarification. Peter?
Can I just confirm that the building round the back of the hotel by the new proposed car parking, is that in the ownership of the hotel?
As far as I'm aware and confirmed by the applicant's agent, yes.
Ian?
Can I just ask, in respect of parking arrangements, there obviously are 2 main parking areas in Portpatrick at either end of the harbour. What consideration can be given to those parking spaces as opposed to directly round about the hotel? And secondly, I noticed that there's intended to be a drop in the number of bedrooms in the hotel, if I'm correct. Would that not have an impact on the requirement of direct parking outside the building?
Yes, can I perhaps, through you, Chair, answer the question in reverse order? The paragraph 4.7 talks about existing parking based on a 6-bedroom hotel. It was reduced to 6. I understand there were more than 6 bedrooms, so the parking assessment has been made on the reduced number of bedrooms proposed. In terms of existing parking, the assessment of that is detailed in paragraph 4.11. I think the situation is we assess the existing public car parks, taking into account distance from the site and the characteristics of the access from them to the site. And our assessment in this case was that while distance in itself may not have been excessive, given the steepness and the lack of pedestrian footways of the access road and the pedestrian path that runs up between some of the adjoining properties, that taking that in conjunction with the distance, they were unlikely to be usable or used, shall we say, by people attending or staying in the hotel.
Yeah. Ian Blake, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's in relation to parking or the loss of parking in the gable end. I think you mentioned that it was shown as 2 spaces, although you feel there were 3 spaces. From the photographs, they seem to be very short. I know from a recent planning application that we had in Pleasance Avenue, one of the reasons for refusal was it didn't achieve somewhere around 4 metres. These spaces look to be way under 4 metres, so can they realistically just now be considered to be parking spaces?
I think I do mention that in the report, that you know, a strict application of council standards in terms of dimension and usability of existing spaces. I think perhaps some of them may be questionable at best, but they are existing spaces. I don't know whether Ken wants to comment on that in terms of...
Thank you, Chair. All I would say is that I'm relatively confident that those spaces are used, even though they are short, and they will result in cars, the rear of cars, overhanging the private lane. I think they're used from the views that I've seen in echelon fashion. So rather than being exactly at 90 degrees to the building, they're approaching at a slight angle to that. The fact that they overhang the lane is possibly not reported in such a way as it would be if it was a public road, simply because it's a private lane. And it's not an ideal situation, but in assessing the site, we've assessed the 3 parking spaces there because we feel that they are actually used, whether they are the right size or not. They are there functioning as a part of the quiet, or at least the capacity of the hotel car park. When the extension is built, it will take away those 3 spaces. So there's an immediate loss of 3 spaces.
If I could just come back. I do understand your position, but I think it may be a bit unreasonable to consider them parking spaces, because you saw in the photograph it was a very small car that was there. That was also, and if it was parked the way you suggested, it is out in the road. Anything bigger at all would almost block the road. I could think of my own car. I think I'd cause a severe obstruction in that location.
Alistair.
Thank you. What is the statutory requirement, if any, for the provision of disabled parking? Is it a percentage of the number of parking places?
Ken?
Yes, the disabled parking, the national Scottish National Planning Policy includes a section on parking requirements. Disabled parking is generally a percentage of the overall provision, but it would normally be a minimum of 1 or 2 spaces. there are no disabled spaces at this particular location.
Alistair?
So, is it mandatory or desirable as it has force of law? I mean, you say 1 or 2 spaces. What does that mean? 1 or 2 out of 15, or is it this defined?
From memory, I believe it's 4% where more than 200 spaces are provided. There is a presumption that there should be a minimum of 2, but that would apply to new car parks that are being provided rather than development of existing, which I think you'll find if you go around any amount of hotels across the region, irrespective of where they are, very few will make any provision for disabled parking.
Ian?
Thanks, Chair. Can I just refer to 412 and the requirement under OP1E and T2 states that requires development proposals to avoid and mitigate any adverse impacts on transport network or road safety. How much is that policy, if you could just elaborate a bit, concerning, as it says verbatim there, rather than an encouragement of cycling and walking? Could you just maybe give me an elaboration of that T2 policy?
That policy also contains, as do all policies in the local development plan, where relevant, encourage access to all development by all modes of transport. So that's an issue that would always be in the forefront of our minds when considering planning applications.
Yeah. Other members? Ivor?
Chair, the yellow lines in the picture, what legal standing have they? And is the road wide enough to actually park a car along the side, so you could have 3 or 4 on-street parking provision that would be additional to the off-street parking that's going to be provided?
Ken?
Being up, oh sorry.
Your initial question in respect of the road markings, they have no enforceable value on a private road. And I dare say that the response from Police Scotland would say that they wouldn't have the resources to go out, attend, even if they wanted to. In respect of the width of a private road, I think there is sufficient width, and this goes back to the point I was trying to make earlier. The area that we see there is used, and I've seen photographs that indicate it's used in echelon fashion. And indeed, one of the submissions indicates that there is room for 2 cars there. I would submit that there's actually room for 3. Now, those 3 cars will extend their rears out into the width of the public road somewhat, but I imagine that it would still permit a car to get by.
Ivor?
But is there sufficient space if cars were actually parked on the road rather than off, as they are just now, between the 2 curbs on the actual carriageway? Is there space for on-street parking there, or would that cause an obstruction where a car couldn't get past?
I don't have any road widths with me to furnish you with that information, but my gut feeling is that you might get some cars past if there were on-street parking there, but larger vehicles probably would not find room to get by. And indeed, as a private road, it would be very, very difficult to enforce anything that you did put on that road. Indeed, there may be, I hesitate to go into the grounds, but it could, I mean, there could be all sorts of ownership issues with regard to the use of the road. Being private, I don't know what arrangements or access rights people have.
I think it would be reasonable to add in response to that question that as far as we understand it, the reason the private double yellow lines were put there was to try and address a problem. You know, they were put there because there appears to have been a history of issues whereby the private road was being restricted by cars parking on it.
Ian?
I was just to ask in respect of private roads, just what jurisdiction does the roads department, the local authority, actually have for such roads?
Chair. No jurisdiction over private roads whatsoever. Our jurisdiction extends to the roads covered by the list of public roads, a register maintained by the Council of Roads that we are responsible for.
Andy?
Thanks very much. I'm trying to remember back to Tilly Allen in 1966, but if that's a road to which the public have access, then it's covered under the Road Traffic Act. The question I would probably put to you, though, is that situation, whether there's an extension there or not, is the same. People could be parking there just now. We don't know. What difference does it, would it make if the extension was there? It's effectively the same problem as it's there just now.
Well, with all due respect to you, Chair, it's not exactly the same because things at the moment, the facts at the moment are that there are 3 car parking spaces available there, more or less off-road. Ken's gone into some detail about dimensions, etc., but they are there at the moment and they are used, so therefore they're taken into consideration.
Can I come back? Yeah, I'm not talking about the parking spaces. I'm talking about these yellow lines that are there to try and put people parking on that piece of road. We've got no evidence about it. Obviously might get something from the applicant, but that perceived problem is already there, despite the fact that there's 3 places there. They would depend how busy. I'm looking at the view and everything else. It could be a very popular place, and I could understand why they would want to expand their business. So it's more a statement, I think. Thanks, Billy.
Ian?
Thanks, Chairman. I suppose when I look at any of these kind of applications that come in from a business perspective and sustainable development, one of the first priorities to look at is the Council's #1 priority, which is building the local economy. And when I looked at this, and I just back from Liverpool over, from the weekend, and it's quite busy down there. It's fairly busy. You come back up here and you feel almost a sense of freedom. And I looked at the recommendations here, and it refers in the refusal in an already severely restricted area. And when you come back to a place that's been busy, it kind of, you're looking at that picture there. So I'd just like to get a better understanding of what it means by already severely restricted area, and kind of put that into context if we could have a better understanding.
I think what's meant by severely restricted area there is the immediate area surrounding the site, and it's in terms of the characteristics of both the public road access to the site, its width, its gradient, restricted double parking restrictions on it, and the other restrictions on the private road, albeit that these are not enforceable by the council, as Ken has set out. So it's restrictions as a combination of all these characteristics, shall we say, in terms of lack of parking as existing and the characteristics of the public and private roads adjoining the site.
No other members, no objectors. Could we have Diane Hunter and Graham Fletcher, please, applicants? And you've got 3 minutes, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Good morning. I'm here today to put forward my case for approval for this application. There is a clear business plan implemented since October of last year that has required a large financial commitment to date. Expectations and requirements of the general public is much greater than years gone by. The breakfast room and conversion of the restaurant to a reception/morning room is essential to completing the hotel's vision and maintaining the support of our lender. Without this support, jobs will be jeopardised and the family home I share with my 2 daughters. The main reason for refusal is lack of car parking, which, after seeking professional advice, I now feel we do meet the standard requirement referred to in SPP Appendix B. 4.12 refers to T2 and that this application is in breach of the conditions of an unacceptable degree. I do not agree with this, as after careful scrutiny, T2 encourages walking, cycling and public transport as a preference to cars and motor vehicles. There is also a bus stop at the bottom of the hill. 4.11, the case officer refers to the distance of the public car park at South Pier as not excessive, but the fact that the hotel is situated on a hill. Customers are unlikely to walk. This is surely an opinion and cannot be considered for grounds for refusal. Customers do walk. Not only that, with the current car parking numbers at 8, should custom not be predominantly on foot, the hotel will be restricted to residents only and circa 32 customers, that being 4 per car. Should this be the case, the hotel could not exist on such low numbers. With respect to the case officer, this is an opinion rather than fact. The fact being clients do walk, especially now with the recent changes to driving law. For this reason, the guidelines set out in T2 I cannot agree with. Portpatrick promotes walking as one of the tourist attractions via the start and finish of the Southern Upland Way. This route is also used to and from the village by many caravan owners. 4.4 states that encouragement should be given both at local and national level for such extension, but cannot be supported in this instance because of policy conflicts. I would like to ask the committee to consider if there are any conflicts to policy. 4.5, again, given the content of T2 and the guidance set out in SPP, I would ask the committee to consider if there is in fact material consideration that can be taken into account when looking at this application. Portpatrick has more than adequate public parking facilities that are used by all other establishments of a similar nature to the Mount Stewart. With 14 spaces,
30 seconds to go, Diane.
We have more parking provision than the other 5 establishments collectively. To discriminate on the grounds that the hotel is situated on a hill, I feel is unfair and not grounds for refusal. The use of public car parking should be available to all businesses. Parking on double yellow lines is an offence and should be a matter for the police, should it be a consideration at planning level at all. It should also be noted that the Roads Department have not recommended refusal but are unable to recommend in favour of the proposal, nor have they referenced any safety issues. Thank you.
3 minutes.
I can breathe.
Members, Peter.
Thank you. Can you tell me how long you think it might take someone to walk from the car park to your hotel? A sober person, that would be.
Probably about 2 minutes. About 2 minutes.
Ian.
Thanks, Chair. Could I just, you mentioned this T2. Could you explain to me, Mr. Hunter, what your understanding of T2 is as opposed to the explanation in the report? Could you just elaborate on that, please?
Could I ask the Chair and the members if I could possibly answer on Diane's behalf, having spoken to the planning consultant in more detail than Diane has? Would that be okay? Basically, these recommendations in T2, as Diane's already touched on, as has Councillor Dick, that basically there's an encouragement to use, in preference, walking, cycling, basically modes of transport other than vehicles. And there's also guidelines set out with relaxation to use in urban situations, alternative car parking arrangements, which are basically off-street car parking, as has been mentioned, and also public car parking, which the case officer does agree is within, the realms of walking. The only factor is that the hotel is on the top of a hill, which is really, I'd say that Diane has been quite lenient when she says it's two minutes. You could probably walk it in 30 seconds. But we also have public transport, which is another, factor that's mentioned in T2.
Yeah, answer you. Jane.
I wonder if between you could give me some assistance with respect to the comments made by the Portpatrick Community Council, who, while they got no objections to the proposed extensions, they do comment on the obstructions causing blockages to the side of the property, and they do talk about existing parking problems. I don't know if you'd like to elaborate on or comment on why they are making those remarks.
Yeah, I can explain to the committee what that is. There's basically there was the 7 representatives that showed concern, 6 of which live locally to the hotel, which is natural for these sort of things, and one of them was a relative of one of those people who lives somewhere in the village but of no great distance to it. One of the objectors made comment to the community council, who've got an obligation to state the case of any members should it be raised. This was raised to say that under the same grounds that what the representation has been made on, and the community council just said, well, yes, we understand what you're saying, but we don't, we don't agree with your comments and we have no objections. We've also got a letter from the community council, which albeit may be late, is for support and recommendation for approval. So in essence, summing up, the community council don't have any objections. And we do feel that it was a way that it was worded that the community council had put forward comments regarding the car parking, etc. But that wasn't the case. It was one member.
Jane?
What I was really getting at, rather than more than individual responses, is the issue of obstruction, unloading and unloading side of the.
I think that's possibly how it comes in across in the report, but that wasn't the feeling of the community council. It is just one member that stated that case, and they actually live in the house behind the hotel.
No other members? Oh, sorry, Ian.
Okay, thanks, Chairman. Just a quick question in regards to, touched earlier in regards to building the local economy. The local economy is the #1 priority for the Dumfries and Galloway Council. Clearly, I mean, my philosophy is that business either it can't stand still, it's either going backwards or going forwards. You're clearly looking to expand your business. So what does this mean to your business in its long-term future vision?
There's been, since October of last year, the rooms were very tired. The hotel has always been well maintained and looked after, but it was tired, to say the least. The rooms have been reduced from 10 down to 6. Basically, it's like a boutique hotel incorporating like suites, walk-in showers, freestanding baths. Keep maintaining all the traditional features of the building, not changing it into some sort of shoebox. And there's a vision for the hotel, which is to offer that the facilities that the rooms, or the quality that the rooms, should I say, not the facility, the quality that the rooms offer throughout the hotel, which includes the toilets, which are usable as they are, obviously, they are being used, but we want to make it so that it's a standard that you do get in other areas. And that also includes extending the kitchen marginally to create, better menus, etc., that we've got planned and are in force now. To move forward, there's been a large amount of personal cash invested, but that is just it's part of the project. It's not the full finished article, of which Diane needs a lenders for, which includes the brewery and her bank. And there's been extensive talks with them, which incorporated the proposed extension, and that was a main factor. What the outcome would be, if I'm honest, I can't really answer, other than I don't think it'll be looked on favourably by the lenders, and we'd have to make severe changes, which could put the hotel back to square one.
Thanks, Shane. It was at that last point in particular. I suppose I could have added that. Just say, maybe we would better frame the question as how long you've been established, and what does it mean to the financial sustainability of your company? But I think you've answered it well anyway. So that's what I've picked up. It's obviously really important.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was just a question about the double yellow lines on the private road. How effective are they in doing what they're there for?
I think, as Diane said, it's not for Diane to police a public road, a private road, should I say, with double yellow lines that aren't enforceable by the police. All possible precautions to stop people parking, which the objectors, could I just say, this is only through speaking to them, nothing in writing. I don't know if they've said anything contrary to this, but what they've said is they've no objections to the hotel improvements. They think it's a fantastic thing. It's a betterment. Their concerns were for emergency vehicles, which could obviously be prevented should there be double parking on there. I agree with the gentleman with the blue shirt, sorry, I couldn't see your name from there, that this problem is either there now or, in my view, with the extension in place, It's actually a betterment and a prevention of people double parking, because at the moment, if you looked at the plan, delivery vans could park half and half, whereas once the extension's there, should it be approved today, there's no possibility of being, you're either blocking the road completely or you're not, which at the moment you could argue that they can park there. Diane has taken measures and written to the 3 suppliers that only do deliver once a week and for possibly 5 or 10 minutes at a time, which is 2 food suppliers, fruit and veg, meat, and Belhaven Brewery, and given written instructions that at no time must they park on the main road, and all deliveries are to the rear, which has been adhered to. So, you know, I do agree with the gentleman over there that, you know, this problem is here, regardless of the extension, and all measures are being taken. We have actually put 4 planters, which are full of concrete and decorative pebbles on top, and we've had a professionally made saying that this road must be kept, no illegal parking, no double parking, it must be kept, access must be kept clear for emergency vehicles at all times. Overflow car parking to the rear, which has never been advertised before, along with deliveries to the rear also. So there's 4 signs, 2 stating that you must not park, access for emergency vehicles, 1 identifying overflow car parking to the rear, and 1 directing any deliveries, which that's already been implemented.
Thank you. And
thanks. If I can maybe just ask, it's 4.6 of the report, which I appreciate you've probably not got in front of you, but it says that parking provision and vehicle access are significant issues. Are you saying that the delivery vehicles for the brewery and things like that will be delivering to into the overflow car park?
Into the rear of the car park, yeah. There's in the turning circle, there's provision there to suitable to take a vehicle of that size, so that they could make the deliveries to the rear, which is what they're doing at the moment.
Okay. So would you agree with the comment that parking provision and vehicle access are significant issues, or are they issues?
I don't think there's any issues with parking, if I'm honest. I think that,
right.
You know, I don't see any issues. And the fact that Diane says, you know, that in Portpatrick itself, there's an abundance of public car parking spaces, and none of the hotels, which I know 2 wrongs don't make a right, you know, what's gone before, as the gentleman said on the last case, shouldn't be taken into consideration. But the other establishments have got no car parking whatsoever. They've got larger numbers of bedrooms, and, you know, Portpatrick, for the Mount Stewart to be offering 14, which on the recommendations of the Roads Department on the 8th of July, when somehow there's been a miscalculation, they were prepared to propose it, you know, recommend it for approval, and not, you know, the current situation.
Archie?
Thanks very much. Just can I ask a question on the extension itself as opposed to car parking? I think we've heard plenty on the car parking side. Looking at the size of the application site, how many would you consider clients, diners actually being in that particular area?
The vision behind it at the moment is there's currently a bar stroke dining area. There's a central hall to the right, a bar stroke dining area, and to the left is I think it's 36 cover restaurant. The vision for this is to revamp it with the reception area, rather than having people standing 10 deep at a bar when they're checking into a hotel of what it's going to be. So there's basically going to be comfortable leather sofas, newspapers, and a private dining area for 8 to 10 people. And then it's going to be predominantly a breakfast room in the circa 18 to 20 people, but predominantly for the use of the residents.
Okay. I've got no other questions. Thank you very much. You may return to your seats. Members, we're now in session. Ian?
Thanks, Chair. Having listened to all the comments there, I would refer to 4.3, and for me, probably the most important aspect of this is the bullet points. The overall vision for Dumfries and Galloway, a thriving region with sustainable economy built on sustainable principles, and it refers to viable rural economy, opportunities in the rural area for economic development and more rural businesses and vibrant towns and villages. On that basis, I know the car parking arrangements quite well myself up there. I would move that this application is approved as an exception to policy on the grounds that this proposal would have a positive impact on the local economy, contribute to the area, and the socio-economic benefits outweigh the reasons for refusal. Thanks, Chair.
Alistair?
I would second that, sir.
Archie?
Well, if Alistair wasn't going to, I was going to. I can hear the issues about parking and all the rest of the carry on, but you know the reason I asked the amount of how many diners would actually be there was looking at the existing 14 spaces. There's actually, if you look at 4 people per car, that's 56 people. They're not going to go anywhere near that, even with the residents within the hotel. So therefore, I think there's adequate parking spaces. It's a private road. There are issues with that. I've got no doubt. But I think there are adequate parking spaces, and I'm happy to go along with what has been suggested.
Jane?
I fully understand the sentiments about economic development, but I think we should be more specific. I think we should agree this on the basis of an exception to policy because of the fact that the council has made it quite clear, the officers have made it quite clear that there is public parking within 185 metres. And I think that's the grounds for agreeing this. Otherwise, we're all over the shop. I don't know, and maybe the members got more information, but I don't know what this actually contributes on a net basis. It's not in front of us, whereas the absolute specific issue of public parking being within 185 metres of this premises is clear in the report, and I'll go on that basis.
Yeah.
I would accept that wholeheartedly. I think that's a good point that Councillor Maitland makes.
Andy?
No, it's all been said. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. Is any members otherwise minded?
Sorry, Chair, could you just ensure that that clause is incorporated?
Yeah. We'll see.
We've had a motion put forward by Councillor Dick and it's been seconded by Councillor Geddes that the recommendation is to approve the application as an exception to policy based on socio-economic reasons, but no, I'm going to come to that. With an exception to policy, the specific exception that there is parking within 185 metres of the premises, but not for socio-economic reasons as put forward in the original motion.
Chair, can we also make sure that the standard, conditions are applied and all that sort of stuff as well?
Okay, item 6 on the agenda is the usual place, Academy Street, Dumfries, 16/P/3/00198. And we've got David Cartmel speaking on this one. Maybe you're ready, David.
Thank you, thank you, Chair. The application is to vary the opening hours of an existing community cafe in the former Townhead Church, which is on the corner of Academy Street. Right, got it. On the corner of Academy Street and Lovers Walk. It's a Grade B listed building in the conservation area. If you note the housing to the right-hand side, adjacent to the application site. The view from Academy Street of the former church, you see the gable of the house adjacent to the premises in the distance. View from Lovers Walk, showing the bin store adjacent to the kitchen with the housing beyond. The door beside the bin store, behind the bin store, is purely for kitchen access. The only access to the building is on the other side from Academy Street through the gate entrance to adjacent to the public park. That's the entrance itself, the sole entrance to the building, and it's set back from Academy Street. The existing not-for-profit community cafe is being run by the Inspired Community Enterprise Trust. It's to provide a range of learning, training and work experience for young people who have additional support needs. At present, the facility is open to the public on Monday to Saturday between the hours of 8 in the morning and 10 at night, and on a Sunday, 8 in the morning till 6 in the late afternoon. This application is to extend the Monday to Saturday opening hours to 8 in the morning till 1 a.m. the following day. This is to increase the range and scope of employability experiences available to young people. Taking account of the issues raised by objectors and the fact that the area is on the edge of the town centre and therefore a degree of disturbance to residential amenity must be expected, it's recommended that the additional hours of opening to the public be granted but limited to 12 events per calendar year. If the applicants plan more events in future, further application would be required and there'll be an opportunity to review the impact of the additional facilities, on residential amenity at that time. The recommendation is to grant with the conditions shown.
Members, points of clarification?
Chair, it's with regard to the second condition. Just wondering if that's a typo whereby the premises hereby granted planning permission shall not be open to members of the public out with the hours of 0800 until 1000 hours. Seems a bit harsh to restrict them to 2 hours operation per day.
It'll be a typo. David?
Well spotted. Yeah, because that's 10 p.m. So yeah, that should be 2200 hours.
Members, anything else? Members? Nope. Could I have Craig McEwen, please? Applicant, if there's no objectors. Right, Craig, you've got 3 minutes and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Quite all right, that'll be quick. Heather Hall's on holiday, so she sent me, but I have no other information to actually add to the application other than to reiterate that our primary position to be here is a training establishment for 16 to 26-year-olds with additional support needs. And we have and we will continue to refuse applications for use of the building that do not meet the goals of our citizenship or employability opportunities for our trainees.
Graham, Craig. Members, any questions? Alistair.
Thank you, Chair. Like you, of course, I'm one of the local members, and I'd like to ask Mr. McEwen that here in the agenda item, it does say that there are been concerns expressed from some of the local residents, and I'd just like to know how you manage this. And at one place it suggests that you would be exiting from the side of the building next to the play park. How do you police that?
Our main entrances are at the doors that you can't see there, plus the arch doors, as we call them, that are in the picture there. So all our public access is to and from the building using those 2 doors. The doors at the other side of the building, there's 3 of them. There's the kitchen one, which you've seen in your picture, but there's also 2 fire escapes, which would only obviously be used in the event of an emergency.
No other members? Ian.
Yeah. Can I just ask you, what services can you offer between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. that can't be offered up till 10 p.m.?
The usual place has become, because it's a former church, it has character, and people are walking in and they're going, I want to be married here. I want to have my wedding reception here. I want to have something different here that they can have elsewhere. Now, we never anticipated that, and that's why the original planning permission was asked for 10 o'clock in the evening. Now, the reason we're seeking the amendment to this is so that we can actually give our trainees the opportunity to have different styles of hospitality training, and weddings would be one of those. Now, people do not want to end their wedding at 10 o'clock at night, unfortunately. I would love it to happen.
I think the condition that they're only having 12 a year, I think that 1 a month or that, like, that's quite a good condition. Members? Nope. Thanks very much, Craig. Members, we're now in session. Archie?
Just basically go with the recommendations, Chair.
Agreed? As amended? Yep. 10 p.m., not a.m. 7 on the agenda. Culreoch Croft, Stranraer, 16/B/1/0101. Billy speaking on this one. Just whenever you're ready, Billy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is an application for planning permission in principle for the erection of a single dwelling house on a site to the south of Stranraer. That's the location of the application site. That's an aerial view of the application site. You see the darker green within that field. There's an access track, an enclosed overgrown area and an adjacent paddock. This and the following are a number of views within the application site as it is at the moment. It appears that there was formerly a house on the site, but that house was demolished sometime in the late 1950s or 1960s, as far as can be established. That's the adjoining paddock that's shown as being part of the application site. This is the private farm access track. That's looking from the site back towards the public road. That's from the public road looking up the track towards the site. This is a view along the public road showing the site access, site entrance on the right. Reference is made in the committee report to a policy in the former Wigtown local plan in terms of remote areas, and it stated that the application site was not within any of those designated areas in any event, and that's just to highlight to members where those areas were. The shaded areas are the remote areas. The blue arrow shows where the site was. So even at that time, the site was not covered by that particular policy, to which reference is made in supporting submissions. These are the plans submitted with the application. That's a location plan, a site plan. As part of the supporting submissions, again, more alluding towards the policy in the former Wigtown local plan, whereby it had to be shown that there had been a house on the site in the past. The supporting submissions included a number of historic maps showing that there was a house there. The question of whether there was a house there in the past or not is not at dispute, and that's made clear in the report. So there were a number of historic maps which did show that there was a house on the site. So the key consideration here is housing in the countryside policy. The site falls out with a settlement, so therefore it's covered by policy H3. None of the criteria in policy H3 are met in this case, so the recommendation is to refuse.
Members, points of clarification. Ian?
Well, just a couple of small points, Chairman. I will be brief. It just said the reason for it being brought in was the plan history of the case, and at 1.4 it says there is no plan history. And Bill, as you said, there is plan history. I think from what you're saying, there's clearly been a croft. If you look back, the old plans are there. So just, the only question is, have you got any idea when it was previously built and when was it raised to the ground?
There is no planning history in terms of our meaning of planning history. In other words, there are no previous applications on the site. As I mentioned in my presentation and in the report, as far as can be established, and this is coming from the applicants themselves, it's thought that the house was demolished possibly in the late 50s, but I think it's more likely possibly in the 1960s.
Yep. Got no other questions? Right, members, we're now in session.
The other thing we need on this one, we need to go with the recommendations.
Agree. Agreed. Item 8 on the agenda, 2 Nith Place, Dumfries, 16/P/3/0147. And we've got Pat Hannah on this one. Just whenever you're ready, Pat.
Thanks, Chair. Could I just draw members' attention to a correction in the report on page 52, the second to last line of the concluding paragraph, 4.18, should read, "The proposal is therefore recommended for approval," with the word unconditional needing to be omitted. The applications for the introduction of a residential use above a shop in the town centre of Dumfries. There's strong policy support for this type of proposal. It's well recognised that bringing people back into town centres can help improve vitality and viability. In this instance, the site lies within the 1 in 200 year floodplain for the White Sands and the River Nith. To address this, the applicant is proposing an emergency access to the rear of the building to ensure that residents can safely leave the premises in the event of a flood. Just running through some of the images. The shop, the shop itself is the former Scotspeed shop, which has recently been reoccupied, and the proposed flat is above that and to the rear. You can see within the red line boundary that there's a double-lined section to the north of the site, which is the area of the flat, the proposed flat itself. The access to the flat is to be taken from Nith Place, and the access is shown on the images there, with emergency access taken to the very north of the site into the car park. This is the access from Nith Place. It's the black door that you can see centre of the photograph that leads into a shared close. And this is to the rear of the site, and the part of the building that is subject to the application is the first floor long building that you can see centre of the photograph with the 4 windows on it. I'll just highlight that. That building there. It's proposed that the emergency access will be provided through the windows onto the flat roof and then down a stair into the car park. You can see a difference in the ground level between the car park area and just to the right of the image, you can see the wall goes down to a lower section. This is the existing first floor plan showing the proposed flat and the flat roofed area. This is showing the alterations, including the stairs. Existing elevations and proposed elevation showing the railing and stair. And finally, this is the indicative, and the stress indicative 1 in 200 year flood risk level for this part of the White Sands. And the flood level is expected in a 1 in 200 year event to reach 9.23 metres OAD. You can see that the main entrance itself will be quite severely inundated, being only at 7.73 metres. However, the emergency exit is on higher land and indeed comes out at a ground level that is above the indicative 1 in 200 year flood level. Both SEPA and the Council's flood risk management team have objected to this application. SEPA object in principle, advising that the first principle of development in the floodplain should be avoidance of a more vulnerable use than existing. The Council's flood risk management team accept the flooding and ground levels that are shown here, but object on the grounds that the emergency stair is not accessible to all potential residents. However, following discussions with building standards, there's no reason why this stair and emergency access would not be able to obtain a building warrant as an emergency access. I think it's also important to stress, and this is highlighted in the report, that there's a balance to be struck here between, on one hand, bringing the white sands back into use, and on the other, protecting property and people from flood risk. In this particular instance, it's considered that the benefits of the proposal outweigh the risk of flooding. Whilst the building itself will always be at risk of flooding due to its location, the proposed emergency access offers a reasonable and acceptable mechanism for ensuring that people are not put at risk. And accordingly, for the reasons set out in the report, proposals recommended for approval, subject to notification to ministers. Thanks, Chair.
Members, point of order. Andy?
Interested in your words of emergency, or could it be termed alternative entry or exit at the rear? Would there be a problem with renaming that instead of an emergency exit, but the alternative exit if, because let's be fair here, if the flat was to flood, the whole town would be underwater. And the people, I'm sorry. So why would we only restrict the new exit or new way of access egress to emergencies? Why not just allow it as a new access?
Thanks, Chair. Well, this is what's been put before us by the applicant, and indeed the access is shown as an emergency access in that there is no proposed door on that route. It is an emergency window that would open out to allow access in the event of an emergency. It's not proposed as a regular access. Whether that would be acceptable or not would be something we would have to look at were the applicant to want to pursue that.
Yeah, other members? Davy?
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of things. He showed that picture showing the door. There was two white doors beside it. Where do they go to? And I take it you're talking about going onto a flat roof. I take it there'll be a platform above the roof for the access egress in the emergency, not just using the roof as such.
Taking your first point, the proposed access, as I understand it, is through the black door there. The white doors are to the flats above the adjacent shop. The premier, what's shown there as being the premier.
Okay, just ask Chair on that basis, what have they got as the emergency exits?
No, what we're looking at.
No, but it's in the area, so there must be something there already, I would have thought. You didn't need to ask it. It didn't answer it if you didn't want to.
Well, we have no control. We have no control over an existing established use, but when it comes to new proposed uses, we do have to apply. So that's the difference between the two in this instance. What's exactly above the shop on the right-hand side, accessed by the white doors? I have no idea, to be honest. Could you repeat your second point as well about the platform and the flat roof?
The emergency window, are they stepping onto a platform that's going to be put in there? Probably walking across the roof, wouldn't it?
It is a flat roof that is shown there, and if I can just get that image for that. The flat itself is this area here. the emergency access would be taken from one of these windows across this large expanse of flat roof over to the steps and down there. There is a railing that is proposed to be put along the edge there.
Any other members? No, I'm now in session. Archie?
Go with the recommendations, Chair.
Agreed.
In relation to item 8, members have agreed to go with the recommendations and to notify the Scottish ministers of the intention to approve subject to conditions.
Okay, go on to item 9 on the agenda, Lochar Moss Landfill, Lockerbie Road, Dumfries, 16/B/3/0210. Claire Eckstein is on this one. Whenever you're ready, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. This proposal relates to the permanent retention of the Leachate Storage Tank that lies to the west of the household waste recycling centre at Lochar Moss, which is just off the A709 Lockerbie Road, and to allow it to be permanently used and also to take leachate from the proposed zero waste park, which is just to the further east of the Shanks recycling plant, and also the ScotGen waste energy from waste plant as well, which is further again. This just shows a plan of the existing tank, its position and dimensions, which is 17 metres in diameter, 4.8 metres in height. So this is the tank in the centre of the photograph. So we've got the entrance to Shanks and the household waste recycling centre just immediately to the left. And this is just a close-up of the existing tank itself. The report sets out the key issues in regards to the siting and design, noting that since the tank was erected, significantly taller waste facilities have now been built in the area, including obviously the Shanks and also the proposed zero waste park. And it's within this context that the proposal is considered acceptable. It also notes its retention would reduce traffic requirements on the road, as the effluent would be stored prior to the disposal through the existing pump water main. And SEPA had raised no planning issues to the proposal, but they do note that there will be significant regulatory and licensing issues relating to this change. And so we've given an advisory directive. As there are no planning objections, the application is in accordance with policy and is recommended for approval.
Members, point of clarification? No. Agreed.
In relation to item 9, members have agreed to approve unconditionally.
Item 10 is 107 King Street, Castle Douglas, 16/B/2/018. And Claire's doing this one again. Now you're ready, Claire.
Yep. Thank you. This application is for change of use from a Class 1 shop to a Class 2 offices, which is to provide a constituency office for the member of Scottish Parliament. The proposal relates to the ground floor flat, which is the former Fox Hat. There are no external alterations at all, so it's just purely a change of use. The report itself sets out the key issues in detail, but when assessing the proposal against the criteria in policy ED5, it complies with these, so the recommendation is to approve.
Members, points of application. Alistair. Alistair.
Could I have an awful good today on asking for definitions? Could I ask for a definition of external alterations. I presume the applicant will be putting some sort of signage on the building. Does that not encompass an alteration?
If you look at 1.3 of the report, it just says that any future advertisements and signage would be subject to a separate application for advertisement consent, so it wouldn't form part of this application.
Pretty much like the High Street. We'll get the same happening in the High Street, Al. We've got no other questions. We're now in session. Members agreed? Agreed. Item 11 is the land at Barwhillanty Estate and Glenswinton Farm, Parton, Mochrum Fell Wind Farm, 13/B/2/0327. David, have you got any more to say about this one?
Yes, members will of course have noticed my deliberate mistake in paragraph 1.3 due to wishful thinking. It was the council had acted in an unreasonable manner, not reasonable. So, but other than that, there's nothing else to add to you.
On to item 12 on the agenda. Fellend Farm, Ringford, Castle Douglas, 15/B/2/0197 and 15/B/2/0198. David speaking on this one. David?
Just the only thing to inform members is that we obviously served an enforcement notice following the refusal of this retrospective application. As a result of this decision by the reporter, we're going to have to withdraw that one, but under operational powers, we will be dealing with the fact that the conditions attacked by the reporter about the height are now obviously being breached, so we will be looking into that.
Stephen?
Yeah, thank you. Just on 1.3 again, I presume the reporter concluded that we had not acted in an unreasonable rather than reasonable.
I really must proofread my own bloody report. That's ridiculous. Yes, apologies. I'd missed that one as well. Good grief.
David?
Chair, I've never known this committee to be unreasonable in the time I've been here and sitting on it.
Patsy?
It's just to get reassurance that I've got the conditions here that were given, and it is all about enforcement and checking that things have been done, and I presume that will be done at Fellend, because it was a unanimous decision to refuse this application when it came to committee finally. So, because we were concerned about it, and I would hope that we will, follow the reporter's conditions, but that we will enforce them.
Indeed, the enforcement officer is already on the case for that one. So the difficulty is the reporter took the view that the condition was definitely enforceable and reasonable and met all the tests of Circular 4/1998, and therefore he has attached that, which then leaves it to us to enforce. And clearly the applicant here, I'm afraid, is already breaching that, and we're aware of that, which means we're now in a position where we have to serve a breach of condition notice on him. There are issues about the fact that he undertook those work before the decision, so the timescales in terms of how we could reasonably pursue that we are looking into. But yes, it's very much on the planning inspector's agenda right now.
Thank you. Is there no other further business? And thank you for your attendance this morning. Thank you very much.